Welcome. I'm Lee Cowan, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, have been outspoken advocates for mental health awareness and education for quite a while. Their latest venture, though, is a website for parents who've lost children in ways related to social media. The project hopes to give parents a space to connect and find purpose in their pain, while highlighting the dangers of social media and bullying. Jane Pauley caught up with them in California.
We always talk about, in the olden days, if your kids were under your roof, you knew what they were up to. At least they were safe, right? And now they can be in the next door room on a tablet or on a phone and can be going down these rabbit holes. And before you know it, within 24 hours, they could be taking their life.
Later in the show, Meghan Markle on the bravery of sharing personal stories.
When you were in danger and severely depressed, at the time I think you were pregnant with Archie.
That's right.
The wrong time to be severely depressed, if there ever was the right time, but you told the audience that you needed to tell your husband, Harry, because if you didn't, you were afraid you would do it. And yet you were reluctant to tell your husband because you didn't know how he would react. And how did Harry react?
Well, he's a very loving husband, so I'm here. I think, you know, what you're saying to me really also speaks to the courage that these parents that you'll have more time with, do you know what it takes for them to talk about this experience? And how brave they are to talk about this experience for other families and other parents, and to relive that grief, but to do it in such a purpose-driven way to help save other children.
Then from mental health awareness to an unlikely form of meditation. Denny Dyke has been creating designs and circuitous paths on beaches in Southern Oregon for over a decade now. And what started as a solo meditative practice has now transformed into a movement. Conor Knighton followed along.
Do you have this all mapped out in your head?
No.
You're just as you go?
As I go.
Dyke isn't big on making plans. He certainly never planned for his freehand labyrinths to become a tourist attraction. He started off making these as part of his solo meditation practice.
It's a practice that I started years ago of kind of living in the now. If you're down here on the ocean with no other input and you're walking a labyrinth, which is a single path, you don't even have to worry about what direction you're going. It just puts you in a different place.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Social media has come under fire in recent years for being a negative influence on young people's mental health. The Surgeon General even issued an advisory calling the mental health crisis among youth an emergency and pointing to some digital platforms as a major factor. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, or Harry and Meghan, as they're more commonly known, have now created a network where parents who've lost children in connection with social media can gather. Here's Jane Pauley.
On a brilliant summer day near Santa Barbara, a group of friends got together. This was not your typical receiving line.
Hi! Look who showed up!
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, better known as Harry and Meghan, are definitely big huggers. It was a meeting of an exclusive club.
Oh, it's good to meet you.
And one that none of them wanted to join. Most of the parents here have lost a child, directly or indirectly, as a result of exposure to online social media. Harry and Meghan are trying to give them, and parents like them, some place to turn for help. It's called the Parents Network, in association with the couple's charitable Archwell Foundation.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you.
Meghan herself knows a thing or two about online bullying.
And how do you do?
And of course, her husband Harry is no stranger to that either, or to unspeakable grief.
The central topic is the loss that these families have suffered. Stories that need to be shared because the parents who are listening who have not suffered a loss think that they couldn't. But they could.
They certainly could. And that's, I think, one of the scariest things that we've learned over the course of the last 15, 17 years that social media's been around, and more so recently, is the fact that it could happen to absolutely anybody. I mean, we always talk about, in the olden days, if your kids were under your roof, you knew what they were up to. At least they were safe, right? And now they can be in the next door room on a tablet or on a phone and can be going down these rabbit holes. And before you know it, within 24 hours, they could be taking their life.
Our kids are young. They're 3 and 5. They're amazing. But all you want to do as parents is protect them. And so as we can see what's happening in the online space, we know that there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're just happy to be able to be a part of
Well, you hope
change for
that
good.
when your children ask for help, someone, is there to give it.
If you know how to help.
Thank you.
At this point, we've got to the stage where almost every parent needs to be a first responder. And even the best first responders in the world wouldn't be able to tell the signs of possible suicide. Like that is the terrifying piece of this.
You can't tell this story to everybody. People don't understand.
It's something Donna and Chris Dolly know all too well. Their 17-year-old son, CJ, died from suicide after what they believe was depression fueled by social media use.
But your son had a demon in his bedroom.
I think so, yeah.
Yes. We had no idea what happened to our son. He had a beautiful car. He worked and did that. He had a job he liked.
Sisters
but,
that loved him, parents that adored him.
Yes. And he was happy. He was a happy kid.
And like so many parents in their place, the Dollys say a factor in their son's depression and death was his smartphone, a device designed to be so addictive that he couldn't put it down, not even in the minutes before he died.
He still had it in his hand, the phone. That's how addicted he was. He couldn't even kill himself without posting about it first.
And like the Dollys, it's often impossible for parents or anyone else to see that someone was so deep in despair that they'd consider taking their own life. Meghan Markle has been there, as she told Oprah Winfrey in 2021.
Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry especially, because I know how much loss he's suffered. But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it, and I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
You had an experience that connects you to these families, and I see you touch your husband's hand in just the way I knew that you would be looking after each other if I went places. But the connection that you have with people is they know you had suffered too, personally. Contemplating killing yourself is what suicidal ideation was. And I'm dancing around this because I can see you're uncomfortable with my even going there. Do you?
I understand why you are, though. I wasn't expecting it, but I understand why you are, because there is a through line, I think. And when you've been through any level of pain or trauma, I believe part of our healing journey, certainly part of mine, is being able to be really open about it. And I haven't really scraped the surface on my experience, but I do think that I would never want someone else to feel that way. And I would never want someone else to be making those sort of plans, and I would never want someone else to not be believed. So if me voicing what I have overcome will save someone, or asks or encourage someone in their life to really genuinely check in on them and not assume that the appearance is good so everything's okay, then that's worth it. I'll take a hit for that.
What is this?
This in-person gathering was just for the launch. The Parents Network will meet mostly online. But group facilitator Leora Wolf-Prusan says the important thing is what the group will talk about.
We're going to stop expecting you to be done with your grief in a year. We're going to stop telling you that we're tired of hearing the stories of internet harm. Like, we will say your kid's name over and over again because they existed and they mattered, and that we know that it wasn't your fault. That's it, right? It wasn't your fault. this happened to you, and now we as a community get to create something with you.
Knowing that we're helping others, and even if that saves one kid and one family's heartache, that's enough.
And these are some of the group's charter members. Taj and Celine Swanson Jensen, whose son Tanner died from an overdose of drugs pushed online.
England was the youngest of...
She was the youngest, 14 years old.
Brandy and Tony Roberts, who lost their daughter England to suicide after online bullying. And Perla Mendoza, whose son Eli died when a painkiller he bought online was actually a lethal dose of fentanyl.
Thank you for being here, but I have to, ask, why would you do this? Why would you do this?
The simple answer, so others don't have to live what we've lived and will continue to live.
I don't expect anything from anyone. This is just a labor of love in honor of my son and all the other children that have lost their lives to fentanyl. This is for the mother who cannot get out of bed, for the dad that won't leave his house. I stand here for them too. I hope that one day when it's my turn to go home, I'll see my son and he'll tell me, "Good job, Mama."
The idea here is that there is comfort and power in numbers, with the goal, as Harry himself once said, of turning pain into purpose.
And the two of you, this is, it's a modest beginning. It's not an army of parents yet.
No.
But what are your ambitions?
I think you have to start somewhere. I think the simplest thing that anyone watching this or anyone who's able to make change, to look at it through the lens of, what if it was my daughter? What if it was my son? My son or my daughter who comes home, who are joyful, who I love, and one day, right under my roof, our entire lives change because of something that was completely out of our control. And if you look at it through the lens as a parent, there is no way to see that any other way than to try to find a solution.
After the break, an exclusive excerpt from Jane Pauley's chat with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Something you can only see right here on Here Comes the Sun. Stay with us.
There's so much more that I can do to make sure that no other dad or no other mum has to go anywhere near going through this level of experience.
As promised, here's more from Jane Pauley's interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
How do you see the healing community at play or at work? Have you observed it?
From my perspective, they have their groups that we help to convene, but then it's what they do when those groups aren't in session, how they spend holidays together, how they become Thanksgiving together, how they become. We were able to help plant a bit of a seed of connection for them, but if there's a need for it, you're watching it grow, and the expansion of that, I think, has been very powerful, especially because they all come from such different walks of life. So when things can feel so polarized or disconnected, you go, these are people that at face value you would think have absolutely nothing in common. And the pain of what unites them is a sad and a devastating truth, rather. And yet through that, they've found deeper connection with each other. So I think that's one of the most healing things, is being able to say maybe they're more alike in so many ways than they are different, which is a good reminder for all of us.
When you were in danger and severely depressed, at the time I think you were pregnant with Archie.
That's right.
The wrong time to be severely depressed, if there ever was the right time, but you told the audience that you needed to tell your husband, Harry, because if you didn't, you were afraid you would do it. And yet you were reluctant to tell your husband because you didn't know how he would react. And how did Harry react?
Well, he's a very loving husband, so I'm here. I think, what you're saying to me really also speaks to the courage that these parents that you'll have more time with, do you know what it takes for them to talk about this experience? And how brave they are to talk about this experience for other families and other parents, and to relive that grief, but to do it in such a purpose-driven way to help save other children. That's the piece that I think for us when we look at this work and why we're so committed to it is because we recognize what it takes for them to put themselves out there in this way and really applaud that so that we can help them champion whatever change needs to be made.
And these parents, they're not the same parents that we met 2 years ago, right? They've gained in confidence. They've been through and are still going through their own personal healing process.
And they have each other now.
But they have each other, and that's what makes the difference. And you know, we know that some of them have real internal struggles because the only reason that they are here as part of this is because they've lost a child to social media harms. But at the same time, there is this drive, this purposeful drive that is energizing them forward and providing new opportunities in that sense. So there's this struggle for them, which is I wish I wasn't here, but now I'm here. There's so much more that I can do to make sure that no other dad or no other mum has to go anywhere near going through this level of experience.
Up next, going in circles. Welcome back. Walking along the beach may feel meditative to many people, but Denny Dyke takes it to another level with his elaborate maze-like paths. Dyke has been carefully creating his labyrinths along smooth beaches during low tide, and tourists and volunteers line up to follow in his footsteps. Conor Knighton has more.
The waves and wind that whip against this stretch of southern Oregon's coast have taken millions of years to sculpt the impressive rock formations located just offshore. But twice a day, the tide creates a clean slate on the sand. It's a blank canvas for the designs of Denny Dyke.
When I want to make a turn, all I do is do what we call a bulb on the end of it.
For more than a decade, Dyke has been creating elaborate labyrinths on the beach near Bandon, Oregon. What begins with a line in the sand soon transforms into a series of twisting shapes, which have become known as the circles in the sand.
Do you have this all mapped out in your head?
No.
You're just as you go?
As I go.
Dyke isn't big on making plans. He certainly never planned for his freehand labyrinths to become a tourist attraction. He started off making these as part of his solo meditation practice.
It's a practice that I started years ago of kind of living in the now. If you're down here on the ocean with no other input and you're walking a labyrinth, which is a single path, you don't even have to worry about what direction you're going. It just puts you in a different place.
It turned out lots of other people wanted that same experience. Hundreds now show up to experience the designs Dyke creates on select days throughout the spring and summer months.
How did that change things for you to go from drawing it for yourself to doing it for other people?
I still do it for myself. I just got a lot of help now.
That help comes in the form of a network of volunteers, most of them former visitors to the labyrinth.
I bought my house where I bought my house so that I could be here to do circles in the sand, and I organized my life around it.
Retired attorney Emily Simon moved to Bandon after walking the labyrinth 3 years ago.
It just really changed the way in which I thought about things like permanence and impermanence, and that I could create something beautiful that I didn't really believe I could in my life.
Previously, had you considered yourself to be an artist?
Not at all, not one little tiny bit. I'm a lawyer, and that's all I thought of was my words and my speech and my writing and winning. That's all I thought of every
There's no
day.
winning in the sand labyrinth.
That's right.
Although, you can take the attorney out of the courtroom, but...
You're standing in my path right now, and I'm gonna get it. Because...
That's a pretty ferocious raking style.
Well, I'm a pretty ferocious little person.
Now we're gonna take a walk. Everybody's gonna get a dream stone to remember their walk.
There's no right or wrong way to experience the labyrinth. Some are joyful, some are contemplative.
I walked it a couple of times and each time feels a little bit different. I think whatever you go in with the intention of thinking about or working through, everybody is here for their own reason. You know, we're all We're all going through life.
I needed today.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Presiding over it all is Denny Dyke, handing out hugs.
Thank you, dear.
And ensuring everyone is having a good time. Ultimately, it is just a bunch of people walking in circles. And yet, it feels like it's more than that.
You talk about it a lot in a spiritual way. Do you feel like this is a ministry for you?
Yes, I do.
Each day of Circles in the Sand begins with a dedication circle.
The path today will be walked by many people. Some are here for the intention of walking. Others don't know what to expect. Just keep moving forward, share the love. So let's go out and create a path.
And it ends when the tide rolls in. All of this hard work disappears, washed away bit by bit. For those who show up to walk this path, that impermanence is the point.
It reminds us everything's pretty temporary, right? I think that's the message for all of us, is be in the now and allow what's next to happen.
I'm Lee Cowan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you right here next time on Here Comes the Sun.